Let's talk about this book.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Man's Book Trash, where I dive into what people don't want to find some real treasure. Today, we're going to be talking about L.J. McDonald's The Shattered Sylph. Now, how I found this book. I'd gone down to Savers looking for anything that might have caught my eye, and I found this in the romance section. Now, it was labeled not just romance, but also fantasy. I haven't read any romantasy books before, but it is a genre I've heard about. I think there's a lot of potential in it. Let's go ahead and read the back of the book. Kidnapped by slavers, Lizzie Patrul was dragged in chains across the Great Sea to the corrupt empire of Meridal. There, beneath a floating citadel in an ocean of golden sand, lies a pleasure den for gladiators, and a prison for the maidens forced to slake their carnal thirst. Despite impossible odds against imponderable magic, three men have vowed Lizzie's return: Justin, her suitor, I guess, Leon, her father, and Rill, the shape-shifting but war-weary battler. Together, this broken band can save her, but only with a word that must remain unsaid, a foe that is a friend, and a betrayal that is, at heart, an act of love. So I thought, what the hell is happening in this book? And I bought it. This is book 2 in a series, the first being The Battle Sylph. Now, some people may come after me for reading the second book in a series, but that's kind of the beauty of thrifting books, you know? More often than not, the books you get your hands on will not be in order, but that doesn't mean you can't read it. Usually, there will be enough context clues left in the book by the author about the previous books for you to understand what's happening in the sequel. Beggars can't be choosers, after all. Read what you want. Let's talk a bit about the author, L.J. McDonald. This is from the back of the book. L.J. McDonald was born in 1970 in Canada and has a bachelor's degree in anthropology from the University of Victoria in British Columbia. She has been writing since she was 15, but only tried to be published recently. Laurie's other interests include oil painting, knitting, drawing, and spinning. Laurie works as a member of the Canadian military as a non-commissioned member and currently lives in the Ottawa area. Visit her website at www.ljmcdonald.ca for more details on upcoming releases. This website does not work, by the way. Now, I wasn't able to access her website, but I was able to find her blog and piece a few bits of information about this book's background together. Now, she wrote the first book, The Battle Sylph, in a month, and wrote the second book, The Shattered Sylph, in a month and a half. Let's read something specific from her blog, shall we? With my helpful laptop here. I assume if someone's bothering to read this, they read The Battle Sylph and possibly The Shattered Sylph. We did. I don't plot my books, not in the traditional sense. Outlines kill inspiration for me dead, so it's all in my head, usually in the form of flashes of specific scenes I want to see. When I started The Battle Sylph, I had 3 images in my head. One was of a man leaping off a sheer cliff and everyone screaming as he changed shape. Another was of a cottage exploding and a bird of prey streaking past a living cloud whose teeth closed right behind his tail. I also saw a slim, bald man standing behind a throne with a king cringing in it, and the slim man was laughing without making a sound. The whole plot of the first book was to get those points in time. I had the same sorts of things in my head for The Shattered Sylph. Leon leaning back against the door, Rill standing almost against him and drinking his energy. Rill high above the ground, upside down and rotating in midair above something horrible. Lizzie dancing in a translucent dress. Leon riding Rill in the form of a horse. It's like I've seen the trailer to a movie, which is a bit hard to deal with when you're the one writing the movie. Unfortunately, she hasn't posted anything since 2016. It seems she's pivoted more into doing art stuff, but the most recent post I could find was from 2022 on her Instagram. So, I don't know what she's doing now. Maybe still working for the Canadian military, if I had to guess? Apparently there are 2 more Sylph books planned in the series, with 4 already released. The 5th one is already written, and who knows when the 6th one will come out. Apparently she said there was no interest from the publisher? It's quite unfortunate. Truly the George R.R. Martin of romantasy books, I guess? At the very least, there is a French toast recipe. But let's get right into The Shattered Sylph, a romantasy book from 2010, notably way before the big romantasy books of TikTok like Throne of Glass and Akotar, which Throne of Glass came out in 2012, which is 2 years after this book, and much after The Battle Sylph. So let's see what's going on. There are a lot of spoilers, so you have been warned. But I doubt you really care. I'll just come right out and say it. I did not like this book. Not because the book is entirely bad. There are actually a few things that I actually found interesting. The world building can be very tropey at times, but the things it does with what it's established makes the world pretty engaging. This book is just almost decent. Sometimes actually pretty good. Not great, mind you, but has some good ideas. But most of the things in this book are just bland or just fine. The things that do hold this book back, though, well, they bring it down so much that it cannot be ignored. Yet the book does its damnedest to ignore them, to sweep it under the rug! There's one thing in particular that I'm talking about, and we will get to it later. It's not good. But first, the plot. Like the back of the book said, a girl named Lizzie Patrul is captured by slavers and sold across the sea to become a concubine. Then her father, Leon Patrul, and his battle sylph, Rill, go to save her. And also this guy named Justin, I guess. It's a simple plot where the male heroes have to save a damsel in distress. Nothing really groundbreaking. And before we dive into the deeper specific parts of the book, we need to talk about this book's world building. The world of the Shattered Sylph, and by extension the entire Sylph series, is based upon the titular creatures, the Sylphs. These creatures are essentially elemental fae beings that come in 6 very simple but very different types. The 4 classical elements of fire, water, earth, and air, along with 2 extra types called healing and battle sylphs. The first 5 types take exclusively female forms, but the battlers are all male. These sylphs are brought from another world by humans, who open a gate from the human realm into the sylph realm. Side note, these gates are opened by human magic, which isn't particularly expanded on at all within the novel. It seems generally fixed in rituals to open these gates and nothing else. I can't for the life of me remember if human magic is used in a different way than opening a gate to the sylph world to get sylphs in. Anyway, these sylphs are lured out through the gates by some object they're interested in, and then bound to a master against their will until the master's death. The sylphs feed off of their master's energy, but in return they have to follow any order their master gives to them. So essentially, this world is dependent upon the forced labor of this supernatural species, which can be very interesting ground to work upon. But apparently the sylphs actually like this arrangement? The book even calls them single-minded creatures starved for attention, even though they seem like fully sentient beings. As for what the sylphs actually do, the only ones really worth talking about are the battle sylphs, often referred to as battlers. All the other sylph types are self-explanatory. A healing sylph can heal. A water sylph is made of water and can clean things. You get the picture. Battlers, on the other hand, are incredibly powerful. They're good at battling. Surprise, surprise. The book even says that a single one of them is capable of destroying entire armies. Having one at your command is like being able to carpet bomb 12th century France. Plus, they're able to shapeshift into essentially whatever form they want without any restrictions, even though their true form is basically a big storm cloud with lightning teeth. But since they're so strong, they're very rare. And then this is where the romance aspect comes in. For you see, battlers are such horny maniacs that to bring them from the sylph realm to the human realm, you gotta put a woman at the other side of it to entice them. Rather than what it takes to bring in something like an air sylph, which is just playing music. But this woman at the end of the other gate is a female sacrifice, because before the battler can get to her, she is killed, and then he is bound to a man, usually. This is one of my biggest issues with this book's world building. When a battler creates a bond with a woman, he's way happier, and then is able to take all the sylphs in the area and stitch them together into a hive with the woman as the queen, like a weird colony of bees. And since this is a romance book, the bond is created by a roll in the hay. And, of course, every battler is monogamous and totally faithful to the woman they love. The best way I can describe this is it's like if Zeus from Greek myth was totally faithful to Hera and followed any command she gave him. But also all the other male Olympians are under Hera's command, but still totally faithful to their wives. The idea that a battler has this kind of soul bond with a female master isn't a bad idea at all. I can see where McDonald was going with this. It's even directly compared to marriage. The women have a connection to their battler lover deeper than anyone else. There are also interesting questions to explore when their battler lover can and will follow any commands that are given to them, though it's not really explored that much. And I guess if you're into it, there's something about all these men being supernatural turbo subs. The issue is more about it making sense. Humans have apparently been binding these sylphs for so long, literally thousands of years, but not once has a single battler made a woman his queen. Perhaps this is expanded upon in the first book, but this has only recently happened, and the kingdom of Sylph Valley is the product. As a result, that kingdom has a whopping 50 battlers to its name, which is like having a nuclear bomb in medieval times. Imagine you have a nuclear bomb going up against the Norman invasion, or throwing a nuke at Charlemagne. Like, what are we doing here? But not a single other kingdom has caught on. It's even clearly stated that they want to know the secret to how Sylph Valley did it, and are even raising their battler count, trying to catch up by doing it the old way, by having a female sacrifice and killing her. But even from an outside perspective, can they not glean anything? The kingdom has a queen, and all of the battlers answer to her. I can only assume that the other kingdoms are just so stupid or so deeply entrenched in their own patriarchal traditions that they cannot fathom a battler being bound to a woman. Like they must be bound to a man, even though the battlers are coming through a gate for a woman and are very clearly horned up for women, often, like all the time. Anyway, let's talk about the kingdoms. Each kingdom has a different level of how enslaved their sylphs are. As mentioned before, there's the kingdom of Sylph Valley, led by Soli, who is apparently the protagonist of the previous book. It's a very small nation on the northern continent, which I don't think ever got a name. This is where our main characters are from, and is depicted as a very peaceful place where humans and sylphs live in harmony. Their sylphs aren't enslaved like the rest of the world, though. Sylph Valley is far above that. The battlers have the freedom to choose their own female master, as long as they're bound into the queen's hive. Because it's simply in their nature to follow the orders of their master, because they enjoy it. I feel like this is supposed to be an allegory for the difference between an abusive relationship and a healthy one. Like having power but not wielding it against your partner? Or it's just some kind of sexual fantasy to have someone attend to your every whim. I don't know. Anyway, there are other kingdoms on the northern continent as well, but they don't really seem any different from each other. They all have a few battlers and get them through sacrifice. That's about it, I guess. One has a port. There's a whole other continent, though, in the south, and that's where the majority of this book takes place, in a nation called Meridal. There are some neat world-building ideas put into the kingdom of Meridal. There's clear wealth inequality, with the poor people living on the ground and the rich people living on a floating island carried by air sylphs. That's a cool idea, perhaps not very original, but it's cool to see McDonald use sylphs other than battlers in interesting ways. Side tangent, this is also done pretty cool on the way to Meridal, because the boat Leon and Rill and Justin, I guess, take is carried by water sylphs, which is very interesting use as well. Back to Meridal, the ideas put into it are interesting at first glance. They've developed their exploitation of sylphs to an exact science, with hundreds of orders given to essentially keep the sylphs in line. They're meant to be an oppressive regime that the protagonists must navigate in order to save Lizzie from their clutches. The big issue with Meridal is, which I don't even know if the author intended it when she was writing it, is that it's extremely Orientalist. It's like if you stuffed all of the stereotypes of the Middle East into one nation. Meridal is a desert country on a continent south of the northern continent that the protagonists are originally from. The things the government does is so cruel that it's almost comical how debased they're depicted. Not only are there thousands of enslaved sylphs, but also human slaves, which are used as batteries to power the sylphs, which the northern countries are explicitly against. They have gladiatorial blood sport where slaves are killed for entertainment. They show off transformed sylphs like animals in a zoo. Individually, these are all interesting ideas, but when put together, my eyebrow starts to raise. Especially when, spoiler alert, the entire regime is toppled by our white, blonde, blue-eyed main characters who essentially install a government just like that of Sylph Valley. Like, I see what you're trying to do here, McDonald, but it feels so bad. Most of all, however, is the depiction of the harems. That's what Lizzie is sold into, after all. These harems are essentially the stereotypical Western depictions of harems, which are just places full of women where men go to satisfy their lust. In this case, the lust of the battlers. Remember how sex-crazed they are? They can't make a proper bond with these women, we'll get to that later, but they're still all horned up. We can't forget they're all horned up! When in actuality, most harems were not like that. While there was certainly freaky time happening, most harems were there to produce an heir for the emperor and had a lot of political sway. When I think of all of these things about Meridal put together, I can't help but think in the back of my mind, did this have to be in the desert country with all the dark-skinned people? Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the characters. The main characters of this novel are certainly the most interesting and fleshed out. Well, the male characters, that is. Lizzie, our female main character, is kind of just a girl? I think she's supposed to be a rebellious teen, which she certainly seems to be when she's first introduced. But other than that, she's pretty bland. Literally every other significant female character in this book is so much more interesting than Lizzie, which is not what you want to hear about your female lead of a romance novel. Huh? Lizzie also doesn't really do much. I get that she's trapped in this harem, but the most she really does is make friends with another concubine in the harem named Eofa, who becomes much more important later on in the book. Lizzie is kind of just a damsel in distress, and that's it. The strongest part of this book, however, is the two male main characters and their relationship with each other. Hell, I would even go so far as to say there's a love triangle between Lizzie, the battle sylph Rill, and her father Leon Petrul, with Lizzie and Leon fighting over Rill. First, Leon. Leon is a badass middle-aged man with a sword who is trying to atone for his past actions. After all, he's the master of a battle sylph and had to kill a woman to become one. At the beginning of the book, he's helping to free one of these female sacrifices from another kingdom. He's very smart and wise as the advisor of the Queen of Sylph Valley, and also doesn't hesitate to go after his daughter when he hears she's been kidnapped. Rill, his battle sylph, is also interesting because of how he is different from the other battle sylphs. Since he was terribly wounded in the first book, he's way weaker than a normal battle sylph is. I was half expecting the author to heal him at some point by the end of the novel, but it never happens. I would go so far as to say this is a disability Rill has to live with, and the way that McDonald explores how he lives with that disability and how it affects him is very interesting. He's still superhuman, of course, but overuse of his ability necessitates a lot of rest, or in the worst case, death. Now, remember that blog post? The relationship between Leon and Rill is so incredibly homoerotic. They literally have a soul binding that has been compared to marriage and deeply care for each other. So much so that you forget that Leon is married to a woman. The relationship between Achilles and Patroclus in the Iliad had less undertones than this. Battlers feed off their master's energy. Rill describes Leon's energy as creamy and warm. Towards the end of the book, Leon is downright jealous that Rill loves Lizzie more than him and wants Rill all to himself. And Leon doesn't see Rill as an object that he owns, but really as an equal. Now, if you remember the author's blog post, one of the images she had when making this book was Leon leaning back against a door, Rill standing almost against him and drinking his energy. If that doesn't scream meowie, I don't know what does. The relationship between these two is so much more interesting than the actual in-text romantic relationship that is driving most of this book, which is the relationship between Lizzie and Rill. I can see what the author was trying to do here with Lizzie and Rill, and it almost works. Deep down, they both love each other, but Rill believes that his disability is holding him back and that he isn't good enough for Lizzie because of it. As such, Lizzie doesn't think Rill is into her. That's a genuinely interesting concept to frame the romance around. There's just one immense caveat that I cannot get over that I alluded to earlier in this video that totally killed any desire I had for the two main characters to end up together, which is the exact opposite of what you want to do in a romance novel. So, let's read the excerpt where I realized what was going on. Chapter 6 from pages 62 to 63.
"She's gone," Leon said miserably. "She was kidnapped. No one can find her. We don't even know if she's alive."
At the table, Lizzie's sisters started weeping. That really didn't make any sense. His head still tilted. Rill kept staring at Leon, though he didn't really see him. He was hungry for the man's energy, but he didn't think to take it. Lizzie? His Lizzie? He'd seen her birth, guarded her childhood, even promised her she would be his queen, until Soli got to him first and subsumed him into her hive. He'd promised Lizzie everything, until Yonda the Battler tore him in two and left him broken and unworthy. Did you catch it? Rill has been close to Lizzie ever since the day she has been born. Not only that, but he wanted her to be his queen, which means he wanted to get it on with her since the very beginning, and I mean the very beginning of her existence. It has been very much established that the Battlers are sexually driven, with one of the powers literally being able to incite lust in women. It's just so... it's so incredibly creepy and gross. As such, you can't fully like Rill despite all the other interesting character traits he has going for him, and you can't fully root for the main relationship either because of what it entails. But wait, there are more quotes because it keeps coming up. Back to page 63. His Lizzie, his beautiful Lizzie. He loved her, wanted her to be his queen, had even begged for her love, and in her innocent granting of it, he'd taken her pattern into him beneath Leon's and Soli's. He'd ignored it for years now, knowing that he wasn't good enough for her anymore and that she still lived in a town surrounded by whole Battlers. They would protect her, he'd told himself. They'd kill for her, and she could find a life for herself, marry, have children, forget him. His taking her pattern into himself basically ties him and Lizzie's souls together, which Lizzie hadn't intended to do at all. The one good thing about taking Lizzie's pattern into himself is that the Battlers in the harem don't sexually assault Lizzie, which, thank God, the one good thing about this, I swear. Anyway, since Rill has a queen's pattern already, that of Soli's, Lizzie cannot become his queen. But also, he's so down on himself about his disability that he doesn't think he's good enough to be a partner for Lizzie. That makes it even worse! Because then you don't want his character to develop. For if he does overcome and accept his disability, he's just gonna go after this girl he's been pursuing since she was a baby! Rill is stated to be centuries old. Look, it'd be fine if this was just an age gap thing between an adult woman and a very long-lived fae. Hell, the one that is that in this book, the one between the concubine Eafa and the battler Sylph is way more engaging. The two of them are trying to find love and hide it in this truly fucked up situation they've been forcibly brought into. That's interesting, that's something, but that's night and day compared to what's going on between Lizzie and Rill in this book. Just consider this line from chapter 23, page 265. "How is that possible for you to be mine?" she whispered. "Your father's battler." "I was yours too," he said. "I told you that. I was yours since the day you were born." She made a face. "I can't have been too impressive as a baby." "You were slimy and squalling and beautiful," he assured her. "I fell in love with you from the first moment I saw you." He saw and felt her puzzled look. "I made it official when you were 7. Oh, that's vile. That's some vile shit, bro. That's vile. Oh, that's not good. That's not good. No, I've read it before and it's still bad. This is like if in Twilight, Jacob intentionally imprinted on Bella's daughter Renesmee because he wanted to get with her when she grew up. And the book is just totally fine with this and just brushes over it. There are sex scenes between the two. Even Leon, when he finds out that his battler and his daughter are in love, is more angry that his battler isn't more in love with him.
But then he's very quickly totally fine that his battler's into his daughter.
It got to the point where I was rooting against Rill and Lizzie. For Leon to command Rill and banish Lizzie completely from his mind, when Rill gives up his entire will to Leon temporarily in the book. Or rooting for when Lizzie is held at gunpoint by the woman who is in charge of all the slaves to just kill her. I shouldn't want the main female lead to die in a romance novel. But when you go on Goodreads and look at the reviews, no one even mentions it. And there's a 3.94 on there. I feel like I'm going crazy. Let's talk about literally anything else. Like Justin!
Mr. Snail, give me strength, please.
Remember Justin from the back of the book? You know, the one mentioned as Lizzie's suitor? Well, he certainly is, and he just wants to marry Lizzie because she kissed him one time when she was 16 to try and make Rill jealous.
Ew.
I think he's meant to be a rival to Rill, and the two of them hate each other's guts, but even then, Justin's just a terrible character. For one thing, he's a coward crybaby piss boy. And when I say piss boy, I mean literally a piss boy. He pisses himself multiple times in this book. There's like a weird amount of piss in this book. Like it comes up often. And by coward, I mean at the beginning of the book when Lizzie gets kidnapped, he gets scared and runs away and doesn't save her. That, at least, is an understandable reaction. But at the same time, I understand why Lizzie wouldn't like him because he abandoned her. He also feels entitled to Lizzie, which is really bad. It's probably a generous read, but I guess maybe McDonald is trying to say something about marriage here? She's definitely advocating for people to marry who they want to. Lizzie and Rill's relationship is a terrible way to go about doing that, but I guess she was trying. But you could remove Justin from this novel and literally nothing would change. His tongue is literally cut out so he can be someone for Rill to feed on. The battlers in Meridal all have 5 feeders that are bound to them that they subsist on for energy. And Justin is locked away for most of the book so McDonald doesn't have to think about him. He doesn't do anything. He's just there to cower, hide, and be captured. Even his rescue isn't an issue since Leon frees all of Rill's feeders anyway, because they're placed in a convenient location for Leon to conveniently rescue them. Sure, Justin is saved then, but what's more important in that moment is that Eofa is saved then. Speaking of Eofa, that's a way more interesting character than Justin could ever hope to be. She's a concubine in the harem that helps Lizzie out, who has made a sort of alliance with some of the other women to trick their overseers. See, they all have specific battlers that they love and want to be bonded to, but can't be because of the oppressive regime they're living under. Eofa herself is in love with the battler 200, who is referred to as Tui throughout the book. He's referred to as a number because there are literally hundreds of battle sylphs in this country, with Rill being branded with the number 703. We'll get to that a little bit later. Lizzie is brought into this system to fool the overseers by thinking that these women are having sex with a lot of battlers. But in actuality, they're just making noises in a room. Which is pretty clever, I guess. Eofa is someone who has made the best of this fucked up situation, and is also at the same time trying to fight against the system that's oppressing her. Eofa is actually the one that becomes the queen of the sylphs in this region. Leon finds out how Rill made a bond with Lizzie, and they use that method to have Tui make a bond with Eofa. It's actually way easier than expected. The parties just have to give up their entire selves to the other. There's that marriage allegory again. The making of a queen, I guess, is the consummation of that marriage. But also, it still raises the question, how did a battler not make a bond with a female before? What the fuck? Whatever, there's enough bullshit in this book, I guess. Now, this relationship between Eofa and Tui isn't the best romance put to the page, of course, but it's far better than what we're getting between Lizzie and Rill. So yeah, the book ends with all the sylphs of Meridal being put under the control of Aofa the Queen. Remember the floating island from before with all the rich people on it? Yeah, all the air sylphs carrying it, just throw it into the ocean and all the rich people die. What a way to topple a regime, huh? All the slaves are freed, and I suppose all the tongues cut out from all the feeders get re-healed by healing sylphs. Even Justin's. I don't care. Nothing happened with Justin's character. Even his tongue didn't stay the same. There was a little bit of sign language used between the women in Alpha's like little troop inside the harem to like send secret messages between the battlers and each other so that the overseers couldn't see them, which could have been a cool world building thing to put in the culture for it to develop over the next years as a symbol of how this oppressive regime affected them, simply because of the sheer amount of people that physically cannot speak words and can only speak like that. That would have been cool, I think, but alas, who knows? That's essentially the book. Leon and the gang return home after Leon supplies everything he could to Aofa to prepare her as queen, slipping back into that advisor role. Sylph Valley has a new ally that has 700 battle sylphs under their command, which is a truly insane prospect for future novels. This one kingdom basically has the equivalent of a nuclear arsenal and can just destroy the entire world if they wanted to. I mean, that makes sense. If one battler can destroy an entire city, think about what 700 can do. It'd be idiotic to try to fight them. I don't know what happens in later books in the series, but this is an interesting thing to explore. Anyway, I'm going to give L.J. McDonald's The Shattered Sylph a thumbs up, thumbs down. It's hard for me to say it's a bad book. After all, what it does with Leon and Rill's relationship is actually pretty great. That's what really prevents me from giving it just one thumbs down. And while I really vehemently despise the romantic relationship between Lizzie and Rill in this book, based on the vast majority of reviews of this book, it seems a lot of people are just fine with it for some reason. I don't know why, but they are. So for the people that are actually interested in this book series and what it has to offer, I guess I'd recommend it. But just be warned that there are some things in this book that are just really bad. But that's going to be it for today's episode of One Man's Book Trash. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know what you thought of The Shattered Sylph in the comments down below, and tell me if I'm going insane or not, please. And if you have any ideas on what I should do for the series in the future, or any books I should go over and read, just in general, be sure to leave it in the comments too. I've got a lot of secondhand books to get into. On the next episode, we're going to be jumping out of fantasy and right into science fiction. Join me next time as we go over the 1981 science fiction novel Death Hunter by Ian Watson. Yes, this is the real cover of the book. What is this? What am I looking at? I'll see you there. Get out of here!